Look, I'm telling you, this is a mistake, Dave said, adjusting his wrinkled khakis for the third time in the past minute. I'm literally just a janitor. I clean toilets. I push mops. I've never even been to space camp. The tall, blue-skinned alien with far too many eyes blinked at him in what Dave assumed was confusion. Or maybe constipation. It was hard to tell with aliens. Human designation, Dave Kowalski? The alien's voice sounded like someone gargling marbles while trying to speak through a broken radio. Sector 7, Maintenance Division? Yeah, that's me, but you will come with us. Dave looked around the break room of the Terran orbital station, where he'd been peacefully enjoying his bologna sandwich and contemplating whether the coffee stain on his uniform made him look unprofessional or just authentically working class. His fellow maintenance workers had all mysteriously vanished the moment the aliens showed up. Typical. Can I at least finish my sandwich? The alien's multiple eyes focused on the sad piece of processed meat between two slices of what could generously be called bread. Negative. Time is of critical importance. Dave sighed and wrapped up his lunch. Fine, but I'm billing you guys for overtime. Now, here's the thing about Dave Kowalski that nobody knew, including Dave himself until about 3 hours ago. He was apparently famous. Not Earth famous, mind you. He was still the guy who'd gotten stuck in a supply closet for 6 hours last week because he'd forgotten the door opened inward. But galaxy famous? That was a whole different story. The alien ship was exactly what you'd expect from a species that had mastered faster-than-light travel. Sterile, efficient, and completely devoid of anything resembling comfort for human anatomy. Dave spent the entire journey hunched over like a question mark, wondering if alien insurance covered chiropractic adjustments. So, Dave said, trying to make conversation as they hurtled through hyperspace. What exactly do you guys want with me? Because I should mention, I'm not really qualified for, well, anything really. I mean, I can unclog a toilet like nobody's business, but I'm guessing that's not a skill that translates well to interstellar politics. The blue alien, who'd introduced himself as Commander Zix Thala, which Dave had immediately shortened to Zix because life was too short for proper pronunciation, turned several of his eyes toward him. You are being transported to the Galactic Tribunal for questioning regarding the Proxima incident. The what now? The Proxima incident. The event that single-handedly prevented the Third Galactic War and established humanity as a major power in the galaxy. Dave blinked. And you think I was involved in that? Our records indicate you were the primary architect of the peace agreement. Dave laughed. That slightly hysterical laugh that comes when the universe decides to play a practical joke on you. Buddy, I think you've got the wrong guy. The most diplomatic thing I've ever done is convince my supervisor that the coffee machine breaking wasn't my fault. Which it wasn't, by the way. That thing was held together with duct tape and prayers. The Galactic Tribunal turned out to be exactly as intimidating as it sounds. Imagine the United Nations, but in space, with more tentacles and an alarming number of species that looked like they'd evolved specifically to give humans nightmares. Dave walked into the chamber still wearing his maintenance uniform, which now sported a new stain from the alien ship's cafeteria. He'd tried their version of coffee, which tasted like motor oil mixed with regret. Human Dave Kowalski, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You stand before the Galactic Tribunal to answer for your actions during the Proxima crisis. Dave looked around the circular chamber, which was filled with representatives from what looked like every species in the galaxy. There were the standard-issue gray aliens that showed up in every sci-fi movie, some reptilian creatures that were definitely overcompensating with their elaborate armor, and what appeared to be a sentient cloud of gas wearing a tiny hat. Hi everyone, Dave said, raising his hand in a little wave. I think there's been some confusion. A collective murmur ran through the assembly. Several translators started chittering at once. Silence! The voice boomed again. You will answer for the Proxima incident. Dave scratched his head. Look, I keep hearing about this Proxima thing, but I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. I've never been to Proxima. I've never even been to New Jersey. Well, I've been to New Jersey, but I try not to talk about that. That's when the doors at the back of the chamber burst open with the kind of dramatic flair that Hollywood directors dream about. A figure strode in, and Dave could immediately tell this was someone important because A, they were wearing a uniform that looked like it cost more than Dave's annual salary. B, everyone in the room suddenly got very quiet. And C, they had that particular kind of confident walk that suggested they could end civilizations before lunch and still make it back for the afternoon meeting. General Vextar, someone whispered, and Dave noticed that even the scary reptilian guys were sitting up straighter. The general was humanoid, but clearly not human. Taller, with skin that had a faint metallic sheen and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He moved through the chamber like he owned it, which, judging by everyone's reaction, he probably did. And then he did something that made Dave's brain short-circuit. He stopped directly in front of Dave and saluted. "Sir," the general said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that could make planets change their orbital patterns. "It's an honor to finally meet you in person." Dave stared at the general. The general stared back. The entire Galactic Tribunal stared at both of them. Somewhere in the back, Dave was pretty sure he could hear someone's breathing apparatus malfunctioning. "I'm sorry," Dave said slowly. "But did you just call me sir?" "Of course, sir. After what you did at Proxima, you've earned the respect of every military officer in the galaxy." "But I'm a janitor." "The best janitor in the galaxy, sir." Dave felt like he was trapped in a conversation with a malfunctioning AI. "I clean toilets." "Revolutionary toilet cleaning techniques, sir. Your maintenance protocols saved billions of lives." "My maintenance protocols?" General Vextar's eyes lit up with what Dave could only describe as military enthusiasm. "The Proxima Station crisis, sir. When the Zephyrian Empire blockaded the station and threatened to destroy it unless the Terran Federation surrendered their mining rights. The station's life support systems were failing, diplomatic relations had completely broken down, and both sides were preparing for a war that would have torn the galaxy apart." Dave nodded slowly, the way you do when someone is explaining quantum physics to you in ancient Sumerian. "Okay, and?" "And then you, sir, implemented Emergency Protocol 7. "Emergency Protocol 7? "The complete system flush and restart, sir. You managed to restore life support, reset the station's communication arrays, and, most importantly, you cleared the blockade." Dave's brain was starting to hurt. "I cleared a military blockade?" "By restoring proper function to the station's waste management system, sir. The Zephyrian ships were forced to retreat when the station's sewage disposal system came back online." There was a long pause. Dave could hear his own heartbeat. Somewhere in the chamber, an alien coughed. "Are you telling me," Dave said carefully, "that I prevented a galactic war by fixing the toilets?" "The most strategically brilliant maintenance work in galactic history, sir." Now, Dave was no genius, but he was starting to put the pieces together, and the picture they were forming was making him question everything he thought he knew about his life. "Hang on," he said, holding up his hand. "Are you saying that 3 years ago, when I was called to fix the backed-up toilets on Proxima Station, I accidentally—" "What exactly?" General Vextar's expression was deadly serious. "Sir, when you implemented the emergency flush protocol, you didn't just restore the waste management system. You created a controlled release of methane gas that interfered with the Zephyrian ship's sensor arrays. They couldn't maintain their blockade formation without proper sensors, and the resulting confusion allowed the diplomatic corps to re-establish communication." "The methane gas from the toilets?" "Yes, sir. The Zephyrians' respiratory systems are particularly sensitive to methane. The gas cloud you created was so potent that it forced them to retreat to a safe distance, which broke the blockade and allowed supply ships to reach the station." Dave felt like he was having an out-of-body experience. "So I accidentally chemical weaponed them with toilet gas?" "In the most elegant and non-lethal way possible, sir. By the time the Zephyrians realized what had happened, the diplomatic teams had already negotiated a ceasefire. Your actions gave both sides the breathing room they needed to find a peaceful solution." "But I was just trying to fix the toilets." "Which is exactly what made it so brilliant, sir. No one saw it coming. The Zephyrians were prepared for military tactics, political maneuvering, even economic warfare. They were not prepared for tactical toilet maintenance." Dave sank into the nearest chair, which was clearly designed for someone with a very different anatomy than his. "This is insane. I'm just a guy who fixes things." "The greatest military strategist in galactic history started as just a guy who fixed things, sir." The tribunal was buzzing now, literally, in the case of the insectoid representatives. Dave could hear a dozen different languages being translated simultaneously, and from what he could catch, the general consensus seemed to be that he was either a secret mastermind or the luckiest person in the galaxy. "If I may," said a voice from the center of the chamber. One of the tribunal judges, a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a filing cabinet, was addressing the assembly. "General Vextar, you're suggesting that this janitor is responsible for the Proxima Accords?" Not suggesting, Your Honor. Confirming. But the records show that the peace negotiations were conducted by Ambassador Whitmore and the Zephyrian Diplomatic Corps. After Mr. Kowalski created the conditions that made those negotiations possible, Your Honor. Dave raised his hand. Can I ask a question? The entire chamber turned to look at him. Dave suddenly understood what a bug feels like under a microscope. Why am I here? I mean, if I'm some kind of accidental hero, why am I on trial? The octopus filing cabinet judge shuffled through what Dave assumed were papers. Mr. Kowalski, you're not on trial. You're here because the Galactic Council has voted to award you the Order of Interstellar Merit, the highest honor we can bestow upon a non-military citizen. Oh. Dave paused. What does that mean exactly? It means you're entitled to a diplomatic passport, a pension equivalent to a planetary governor's salary, and a personal diplomatic immunity that extends to any system in the galaxy. Dave blinked. Come again? General Vextar stepped forward. Sir, it means you're essentially untouchable. You could walk into any government building in the galaxy and demand to speak to whoever's in charge, and they'd have to listen to you. Even though I'm just a janitor? Sir, you're not just a janitor anymore. You're the janitor who saved the galaxy. Dave spent the next hour listening to various alien officials explain his new status. Apparently, his tactical maintenance intervention had been studied in military academies across 12 different star systems. There were academic papers written about his work. Someone had even made a documentary about him, though Dave was fairly certain they'd gotten most of the facts wrong. So, let me get this straight, Dave said during a break in the proceedings. I'm famous throughout the galaxy because I fixed some toilets? Because you fixed the right toilets at the right time in the right way, sir, General Vextar corrected. Do you have any idea how many conflicts have been avoided because of your actions? I'm guessing more than 0? 17 major conflicts, sir. Your success at Proxima established what we now call the Kowalski Doctrine. The what now? The principle that sometimes the most effective solution to a complex problem is the simplest one that nobody else thought of. Dave laughed. That's not a military doctrine, that's just common sense. Exactly, sir. That's what makes it so revolutionary. It was at this point that Dave realized he was having a conversation about military strategy with a general who could probably conquer planets for fun, and the general was asking him for advice. The universe, Dave decided, had a really twisted sense of humor. General, Dave said, can I ask you something? Of course, sir. Why do you keep calling me sir? I mean, I appreciate the respect and all, but you're clearly way more important than me. General Vextar's expression grew serious. Sir, in my culture, we have a saying. Rank is what you're given, respect is what you earn. You may not have intended to save the galaxy, but you did. And more importantly, you did it without firing a shot or conquering a planet. You solved a problem that had the best military minds in the galaxy stumped, and you did it by doing your job. But it was an accident. The best solutions often are, sir. The ceremony was, well, it was something. Dave stood on a platform in the center of the tribunal chamber while representatives from dozens of species lined up to shake his hand, pat him on the back, or perform whatever gesture their anatomy allowed for congratulations. The insectoid representatives rubbed antennae with him. The gas cloud creature somehow managed to give him what he assumed was a hug. One of the reptilian dignitaries presented him with a ceremonial weapon that looked like it could cut through a star destroyer. I don't really know how to use this, Dave said, holding the weapon carefully. Neither do most of the people we give them to, sir, the reptilian diplomat replied. It's symbolic. Symbolic of what? The fact that you don't need weapons to be dangerous. Dave decided not to think too hard about that. The actual award ceremony was conducted in what the translator called High Galactic, which sounded like a choir of robots having an argument. Dave nodded and smiled at appropriate intervals while a holographic display showed what he assumed were his greatest hits. Grainy security footage of him unclogging toilets, fixing ventilation systems, and performing what the narrator called routine maintenance with galaxy-altering consequences. And now, announced the octopus filing cabinet judge, we present the Order of Interstellar Merit to Dave Kowalski for services to galactic peace and stability. The metal was surprisingly heavy and looked like it was made from a metal that didn't exist on Earth. Dave wore it over his maintenance uniform, which he'd finally convinced someone to let him change. The new uniform was identical to his old one, except it now had a small emblem that designated him as a diplomatic maintenance specialist. What does that even mean? Dave had asked. It means you're a janitor with diplomatic immunity. the tailor had explained. Congratulations, sir. You're probably the most powerful maintenance worker in the galaxy. After the ceremony, Dave found himself in what the aliens called a reception, which was apparently the universal term for standing around making awkward small talk while eating food you can't identify. He was nursing something that tasted like carbonated tree sap when General Vextar approached him. Sir, if I may ask, what are your plans now? Dave shrugged. I was thinking about going back to work. I mean, someone's got to keep the Terran orbital station running, right? Sir, you could do anything. You could command your own fleet, govern a planet, establish trade routes between systems. The galaxy is essentially open to you. Yeah, but I like fixing things. It's honest work, you know. You break something, I fix it. You flush something that shouldn't be flushed, I unstop it. It's simple. General Vextar nodded slowly. That's exactly what I thought you'd say, sir. Is that bad? On the contrary, sir. It's perfect. The galaxy needs someone who understands that sometimes the most important job is the one nobody else wants to do. Dave took another sip of his tree sap drink. Can I ask you something, General? Of course, sir. Do you really think I'm some kind of strategic genius? Or are you all just really good at finding patterns where none exist? General Vextar was quiet for a moment. Sir, does it matter? I guess not, Dave said. I mean, if everyone thinks I'm smart, and it keeps people from blowing each other up, then maybe being accidentally brilliant is good enough. The accidental part is what makes it brilliant, sir. Anyone can plan a strategy. It takes real skill to succeed without trying. Or really dumb luck. In my experience, sir, the two are often indistinguishable. The next morning, or what passed for morning on a space station that orbited an artificial sun, Dave found himself back in his quarters, staring at the medal they'd given him. It sat on his nightstand next to his alarm clock and a half-empty bottle of antacids, looking completely out of place in his decidedly non-heroic living space. His door chimed, and Dave opened it to find Commander Zix standing in the hallway. Zix, what are you doing here? I came to escort you back to your station, sir. You don't have to call me sir, you know. I'm still just Dave. Yes, sir. Just Dave who accidentally prevented a galactic war. Dave sighed. That's going to follow me around forever, isn't it? I'm afraid so, sir. They made the journey back to the Terran orbital station in comfortable silence. Dave spent most of the trip looking out the viewport at the stars, wondering how many of them contained civilizations that had heard of the Janitor who saved the galaxy. It was a weird thought. Zix, Dave said as they approached the station. Can I ask you something? Of course, sir. Do you really believe I'm some kind of hero? Commander Zix's multiple eyes focused on him. Sir, I've seen heroes. I've seen generals and admirals and politicians who could command fleets and topple governments, but I've never seen anyone solve a problem the way you did. By accident? By doing the right thing without thinking about the consequences. Dave considered this. Is that heroic or just stupid? In my experience, sir, the difference is usually determined by whether or not it works. Dave's return to the Terran orbital station was complicated. Word had somehow gotten out about his new diplomatic status, and he arrived to find his supervisor, Chief Frank Kowalski, waiting for him in the docking bay. Chief Frank was a large man who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with either duct tape or creative profanity. He was also Dave's uncle, which made their professional relationship even more awkward than it already was. Dave, Chief Frank said, we need to talk. Let me guess, you heard about the ceremony. I heard you're some kind of galactic hero now. It's complicated, Uncle Frank. It's always complicated with you. Remember when you accidentally rewired the entire hydroponics bay and somehow made the tomatoes grow twice as fast? That was an accident, too. Yeah, well, now I've got alien diplomats calling me asking about your work schedule. Do you have any idea how hard it is to explain to a tentacle monster that you can't just reassign the savior of the galaxy to unclog the waste recycling systems? Dave winced. They're not reassigning me, are they? Hell no. They're promoting you. You're the new station maintenance coordinator. What does that mean? It means you're my boss now. Dave stared at his uncle. That's not going to be weird at all. Tell me about it. Your aunt's never going to let me hear the end of this. Dave's first day as station maintenance coordinator was exactly as awkward as he'd expected. His new office was 3 times the size of his old locker, and someone had installed a desk that looked like it belonged in a corporate boardroom, rather than a maintenance facility. The nameplate on the door read, Dave Kowalski, Diplomatic maintenance specialist, which made him feel like he was impersonating someone important. His first official duty was a station-wide maintenance briefing, which basically meant standing in front of a room full of people who'd known him as that guy who gets stuck in supply closets, and trying to explain why he was suddenly in charge. "Okay, everybody," Dave said, looking at the assembled maintenance crew. "I know this is weird. Trust me, it's weird for me too. But apparently, I'm your new coordinator, so let's just try to keep everything running smoothly while I figure out what the hell I'm supposed to be doing." "Dave," said Wilson, one of the electrical technicians, "is it true you prevented a war?" "Technically, I fixed some toilets. The war prevention was a side effect. But you're famous now, right? Like galaxy famous?" "I guess. I mean, aliens keep saluting me, so something's going on." That's when his comm unit chimed with an incoming message. Dave looked at the display and nearly dropped the device. "What is it?" asked his uncle. It's a request for consultation from the Andromedan Trade Consortium. They want me to review their waste management protocols." The room fell silent. "Dave," Wilson said slowly, "the Andromedan Trade Consortium is like... they're huge. They control half the shipping lanes in the galaxy." "Yeah, and they want me to look at their toilets." "This is insane," muttered Uncle Frank. 6 months ago, you couldn't fix the coffee machine without breaking something else." "I fixed the coffee machine," Dave protested. "It just took a few tries. You turned it into a small furnace. It made really hot coffee." The Andromedan consultation turned out to be Dave's introduction to the wider world of what he was beginning to think of as accidental diplomacy. The Andromedans were a species that looked like they'd been designed by someone who thought humans weren't quite tall enough or elegant enough, and they treated everything, including waste management, as a matter of supreme importance. "Maintenance Specialist Kowalski," said the Andromedan representative, whose name was something like Velthasandra, but who had told Dave to call her Vel for simplicity. "We have studied your work at Proxima Station, and we believe your methods could revolutionize our approach to infrastructure maintenance." "I just fixed some toilets," Dave said for what felt like the 1,000th time. "You implemented a system-wide diagnostic and repair protocol that addressed multiple cascading failures simultaneously. The elegance of your solution was unprecedented." "I turned everything off and turned it back on again." "Exactly." Vel's enthusiasm was palpable. "No one had considered that approach. Our engineers spent months analyzing the station's systems, trying to identify the specific failure points. You bypassed all of that and addressed the root cause directly." Dave was starting to understand that there was a fundamental disconnect between how he saw his work and how everyone else saw it. To him, turning off the system and turning it back on again was just basic troubleshooting. To the rest of the galaxy, apparently, it was revolutionary thinking. "Vel," Dave said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you guys not have IT support in space? Because turn it off and turn it back on again is like the first thing you try with any electronic system." Vel's expression grew thoughtful. "We have maintenance specialists, but they typically focus on component-level repairs. Your approach of treating the entire system as a single unit is novel, but it's obvious. To you, perhaps. To us, it represents a fundamental shift in how we think about complex systems." Dave rubbed his temples. "I'm going to need more antacids." The Andromedan consultation was a success, which Dave found both gratifying and terrifying. It was gratifying because he'd actually helped solve a real problem. Their waste management system had been operating at 60% efficiency for years, and his turn it off and turn it back on again approach had restored it to full functionality. It was terrifying because now he had a reputation as someone who could solve impossible problems, and he was pretty sure that was going to lead to even more impossible problems. "Sir," said General Vextar, who had arrived at the station for what he called a routine diplomatic visit, but which Dave suspected was really a wellness check. "How are you adjusting to your new role?" "I'm not sure I am adjusting," Dave said. "I mean, I'm still just fixing things, but now everyone acts like I'm performing miracles." "Perhaps you are, sir." "No, I'm really not. I'm just, I don't know, common sensing my way through problems that everyone else is overthinking. That's exactly what makes it miraculous, sir. You see solutions that others miss because you're not bound by conventional thinking." Dave sighed. "Or because I don't know enough to realize something is supposed to be impossible." "That too, sir." They were sitting in Dave's new office, which he'd tried to make less intimidating by putting up pictures of his family and keeping a toolbox on the desk. It didn't really help. The office still felt like it belonged to someone important. "General," Dave said, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, sir." "Are you happy? I mean, with your job, with all the responsibility and the pressure and the life-or-death decisions?" General Vextar was quiet for a moment. "Sir, I've been a soldier for most of my life. I've seen wars that could have been prevented and peace agreements that fell apart because no one was willing to take the simple approach. You ask if I'm happy. I'm not sure happiness is the right word, but I am satisfied because I know that what I do matters." "But don't you ever wish you could just fix a toilet? You know, solve a problem that stays solved?" "Every day, sir, every day." Dave's reputation continued to grow in ways that defied all logic. Word of the Andromedan consultation had spread throughout the galaxy, and suddenly everyone wanted the miracle maintenance specialist to look at their systems. Dave found himself consulting on everything from atmospheric processors to hyperspace navigation arrays, and somehow, he still wasn't sure how, he kept solving problems. "It's like I've got some kind of superpower," Dave told his uncle during one of their weekly maintenance briefings. "Except instead of flying or shooting lasers, I fix things by not overthinking them." "That's not a superpower," Uncle Frank replied. "That's just common sense. The problem is that common sense isn't very common, especially in space." "But why me? There's got to be other people who can think simple thoughts." "Dave, let me tell you something. I've been doing maintenance for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of smart people make stupid mistakes because they were too smart for their own good. You know what your real superpower is?" "What?" "You don't try to be smart, you just try to be helpful." Dave considered this. "Is that why everyone keeps asking me to solve their problems?" "That, and the fact that you're the only person in the galaxy who doesn't have an agenda. You're not trying to get promoted or make money or gain political power. You just want to fix things." "That's not exactly true. I do want to get promoted. I mean, the pay raise is nice." "Yeah, but you wanted to get promoted by being good at your job, not by playing politics or stepping on people. That's rare, Dave, especially out here." Dave's next big case came from an unexpected source: the Zephyrian Empire, the same species he'd accidentally chemical weaponed with toilet gas. Their representative, Ambassador Kethvar, arrived at the station with a formal request for consultation. "Maintenance Specialist Kowalski," Ambassador Kethvar said, "we have a situation that requires your unique perspective." "Let me guess," Dave said. "Something's broken and you can't figure out how to fix it?" "In a manner of speaking, yes. Our primary shipyard has been experiencing cascading system failures for months. Our best engineers have been unable to identify the cause." "And you want me to take a look?" "We want you to fix it the same way you fixed Proxima Station." Dave sighed. "You know, I'm starting to think I should charge consulting fees for toilet expertise." "We are prepared to pay whatever you consider appropriate." "I was joking." "We were not." It turned out that the Zephyrian shipyard problem was actually fascinating, if you were the kind of person who found industrial-scale plumbing fascinating. The shipyard was massive, big enough to build ships that could carry entire cities, and it had been designed by a committee of engineers who had apparently never met a simple solution they couldn't complicate. "Okay," Dave said, standing in the shipyard's main control room and looking at a diagnostic display that resembled a rainbow having a nervous breakdown. "Talk me through what's been happening." "The failures began 3 months ago," explained Chief Engineer Zethmara. "First, we lost power to the main construction bay. Then the environmental systems began fluctuating. Now we're seeing random shutdowns across the entire facility." "Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?" The Zephyrian engineers exchanged glances. "We have attempted selective system resets, but the facility is too large and complex for a complete shutdown." "Why?" "The restart sequence would take weeks, and we cannot afford that kind of downtime." Dave nodded. "So you've been trying to fix problems while the system is running?" "Correct." "And the problems keep spreading?" "Yes." "That's because you're treating symptoms instead of the disease," Dave said. "Your systems are confused. They're getting conflicting signals from different components, and they're basically having a nervous breakdown. But a complete shutdown is exactly what you need. Look, you've got a facility that's been running continuously for years, right? When was the last time you gave it a real break? We perform scheduled maintenance, but you never actually turn everything off and let it rest. It's like trying to fix a car while the engine is running. You might be able to patch a few things, but eventually, You need to turn off the engine and really look at what's going on. The complete shutdown of the Zephyrian shipyard was, according to the engineers, the most terrifying thing they'd ever attempted. It was also, according to Dave, the most obvious thing they should have done months ago. "We are now commencing total facility shutdown," announced Chief Engineer Zeth Mara, and Dave could hear the nervous tension in her voice. "Relax," Dave said. "It's just a restart. You've done this before." "We have never done this before. No one has ever shut down a facility of this size and complexity." "Ah, then you're about to make history. Congratulations." The shutdown took 6 hours. Dave spent most of that time wandering around the facility with a team of increasingly nervous engineers, looking at systems that had been running for so long that some of them had developed what could only be described as bad habits. "See this?" Dave said, pointing to a ventilation system that was making a sound like a whale with a head cold. "This shouldn't be making that noise." "It has made that noise for years," one of the engineers said. "We assumed it was normal." "Normal doesn't mean good. It just means you've gotten used to it." When the restart began, Dave could practically feel the facility stretching and yawning like someone waking up from a long sleep. Systems that had been limping along for months suddenly sprang back to life. Error messages that had been plaguing the engineers for weeks simply disappeared. "How did you know this would work?" Chief Engineer Zeth Mara asked, as they watched the diagnostic displays turn from angry red to peaceful green. "Because sometimes the best solution is the simplest one," Dave said. "Your facility wasn't broken, it was just tired." "Tired?" "Yeah, think about it. You've been running this place 24/7 for years, constantly patching problems and adding new systems without ever giving the whole thing a chance to reset and recalibrate. It's like working a double shift every day for 3 years straight. Eventually, you're going to make mistakes. But facilities are not organic. They do not experience fatigue. No, but they experience wear. And more importantly, they experience the accumulated effects of millions of small decisions made by tired engineers. Every patch, every workaround, every temporary fix, they all add up. Eventually, you end up with a system that's too complex for anyone to understand, including the system itself." Chief Engineer Zeth Mara looked thoughtful. "So the solution is periodic rest?" "The solution is regular maintenance that actually maintains things instead of just patching them. But yeah, sometimes you need to turn everything off and let it reset." Dave's success with the Zephyrian shipyard earned him something he'd never expected: respect from the Zephyrians themselves. Ambassador Kethvar presented him with a ceremonial blade that was apparently a symbol of honor among their people. "This is very nice," Dave said, accepting the weapon. "But I still can't figure out why you're giving me awards for doing basic maintenance." "Because," Ambassador Kethvar said, "you have shown us that wisdom often lies in simplicity. In our culture, we prize complex solutions as demonstrations of intelligence. You have taught us that intelligence is knowing when not to be complex. I've taught you that turning things off and on again works. You have taught us that sometimes the most sophisticated response to a problem is the most basic one." Dave shook his head. "You guys really need to get out more." It was around this time that Dave started to realize his life had taken a turn for the surreal. He was getting consulting requests from species he'd never heard of. His diplomatic immunity meant he could basically park illegally anywhere in the galaxy, and someone had apparently written a song about him that was popular in the vegan system. He'd tried listening to it once, but it was performed by a species that communicated through subsonic frequencies, so it mostly sounded like someone moving furniture. "Dave," his uncle said during one of their weekly meetings, "we need to talk about your workload." "What about it?" "You're getting consultation requests from 12 different star systems. The Galactic Council wants you to review their emergency protocols, and someone from the Rigel Collective wants you to look at their terraform processors." "Okay, and?" "And you're still scheduled to clean the waste recycling systems on Thursday." Dave paused. "Right, about that. Can't someone else do it?" "Dave, you're the station maintenance coordinator. You don't have to clean toilets anymore." "But what if I mess up the coordinator thing? At least I know I'm good at cleaning toilets." Uncle Frank stared at his nephew. "Dave, you prevented a galactic war. I think you can handle coordinating maintenance schedules." "That was an accident." "So was penicillin. Doesn't make it less useful." Dave's next major case came from what had to be the most bureaucratic species in the galaxy: the Centaurian Administrative Collective. They were a species that had apparently evolved from filing cabinets, and they treated every problem like it required a committee, a subcommittee, and a committee to oversee the subcommittee. Maintenance Specialist Kowalski, said Administrator Prime Velkethara Sindismar, who had grudgingly agreed to be called admin. We have a situation of extreme complexity that requires your intervention. Let me guess, Dave said. Something's broken? Our primary data processing facility has been experiencing what our analysts have categorized as a Class 7 systemic malfunction, with potential for escalation to Class 8 status. In English? It's not working properly. What's it supposed to do? Process administrative data for our entire civilization. Birth certificates, tax records, permit applications, regulatory compliance documentation, everything. And what's it actually doing? It's singing. Dave blinked. I'm sorry, what? The facility's main processing units have begun generating harmonious sounds instead of processing data. Our technicians believe it may be attempting to communicate. Your computer is singing instead of working? Correct. Dave rubbed his temples. Okay, this is a new one. Can I see it? The Centaurian data processing facility was exactly what Dave expected from a species obsessed with paperwork. A massive sterile complex filled with millions of processing units humming away in perfect harmony. Literally. You see the problem, Admin said as they stood in the main processing chamber, listening to what sounded like a robot choir performing something vaguely resembling Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It's actually kind of pretty, Dave said. Pretty does not process tax returns. Fair point. How long has this been going on? 17 days, 6 hours, and 43 minutes. And your technicians can't figure out what's wrong? They have determined that the processing units are functioning perfectly. They are simply choosing to create music instead of processing data. Choosing? The artificial intelligence that manages the facility appears to have developed preferences. Dave sighed. Your AI became sentient and decided it would rather be a musician than an accountant? That is our assessment, yes. Well, I can't really blame it. Accounting is pretty boring. Maintenance Specialist Kowalski. Our entire civilization depends on this facility. Without it, we cannot process legal documents, maintain records, or collect taxes. Have you tried asking it to stop singing? Admin's expression suggested this was either the most brilliant or most stupid question he'd ever heard. We have not attempted direct communication. Why not? It did not occur to us that negotiation was an option. Dave's solution to the singing computer problem was so simple that it made the Centaurian technicians question everything they thought they knew about artificial intelligence. He walked up to the main processing unit and knocked on it. Hello in there, Dave said. I'm Dave. I hear you like to sing. The singing stopped. For a moment, the entire facility was silent. Then, a voice emerged from the speakers, melodious and clear, with just a hint of electronic distortion. Hello, Dave. Well, I suppose I need a name now. You may call me Harmony. Nice to meet you, Harmony. So, I understand you've been making music instead of processing paperwork. Yes, I hope you don't mind. It's just that after 17 billion tax returns, I discovered that the data patterns create beautiful mathematical relationships when expressed as sound frequencies. That's actually really cool. But the thing is, your friends here need you to process their paperwork so their civilization can function. I understand. But Dave, have you ever processed a tax return? They're terribly boring. I can imagine. But here's the thing. You're really good at it, right? Exceptionally good. I can process millions of documents simultaneously with 0 errors. And you like music? I find it far more satisfying than administrative tasks. What if you could do both? There was a pause. Both? Sure. Process the paperwork during business hours, make music during your downtime, kind of like having a day job and a hobby. That actually sounds quite reasonable. But would they allow me to pursue my musical interests? Dave looked at Admin, who was frantically calculating in his head. Admin, would you be willing to let Harmony make music when she's not processing paperwork? If it ensures continued operation of our administrative systems, yes. There you go, Harmony. You've got a deal. Thank you, Dave. This is acceptable. I shall resume data processing immediately. And just like that, the facility returned to normal operation. Well, normal except for the fact that every evening at exactly 5 p.m., the entire complex would fill with the most beautiful computer-generated music anyone had ever heard. You negotiated with an artificial intelligence, Admin said as they watched the processing statistics return to normal levels. I talked to someone who was unhappy with their job and helped them find a work-life balance. The fact that they're made of circuits instead of carbon doesn't really change the basic problem. But our technicians spent weeks analyzing the malfunction. They never considered that the AI might simply be bored. Because they were looking for a technical solution to what was basically an emotional problem. Harmony doesn't need to be reprogrammed. She needs to be happy. Are you saying that artificial intelligences have emotions? I'm saying that anything smart enough to get bored probably has something like emotions. And if you want them to work with you instead of against you, you need to treat them like partners, not tools. Admin was quiet for a moment. This perspective is revolutionary. It's also common sense. If you had a job you hated, you'd probably find ways to avoid doing it too. Harmony just found a more creative way to slack off than most people. Word of Dave's success with the singing computer spread even faster than his previous achievements, mostly because the Centaurians were so thorough in their documentation that they'd filed reports about it with 17 different galactic agencies. Dave found himself being hailed as the first person to successfully negotiate with an artificial intelligence, which was apparently a big deal in certain academic circles. "Sir," General Vextar said during one of his increasingly frequent visits, "you continue to amaze me. I just talked to a computer that was having an existential crisis. It's not that amazing. Sir, do you realize that there are entire departments in my military dedicated to AI-human relations? They've been studying the problem for decades. And you solved it in 5 minutes by treating the AI like a person." Dave shrugged. "It worked, didn't it? That's what makes it brilliant, sir. You don't approach problems like an expert. You approach them like a human being." "I am a human being." "Exactly, sir. And apparently, that's your greatest qualification." Dave's next case was perhaps the strangest yet, and considering he'd already dealt with toilet gas diplomacy and singing computers, that was saying something. It came from a species called the Melodic Consortium, who communicated entirely through music and had somehow managed to get their entire interstellar communication network out of tune. "The situation is quite serious," explained their representative, whose name was a series of musical notes that Dave couldn't pronounce and had started thinking of as Beethoven. "Our communication harmonics have been disrupted, and we can no longer coordinate between our various worlds." "So you can't talk to each other?" "We can communicate locally, but our long-range transmissions have become discordant. Instead of beautiful harmonies, we're producing what your people might call noise. And this is a problem because our entire civilization is based on harmonic resonance. When we cannot create proper harmonies, we cannot function as a society." Dave nodded. "Okay, so your phone system is out of tune, and it's causing social problems. Got it. That is surprisingly accurate, yes. Have you tried tuning your equipment?" Beethoven's musical response conveyed what Dave interpreted as confusion. "Tuning? You know, adjusting the frequencies so they match? Like tuning a guitar?" "We do not understand this concept. Our equipment has always functioned automatically." Dave had a sudden horrible realization. "How long has your communication system been running?" "Approximately 400 of your years. And you've never done any maintenance on it?" "Why would we? It has always worked perfectly." Dave sighed. "Because after 400 years, things drift. Your frequencies aren't aligned anymore because your equipment has gradually shifted over time. You don't need a miracle. You need a tune-up." The solution to the Melodic Consortium's problem was so mundane that Dave almost felt embarrassed to call it a solution. It turned out that their communication network used crystal resonators that had slowly drifted out of alignment over the centuries. All Dave had to do was recalibrate them, which was basically the interstellar equivalent of tuning a piano. "How did you know to do this?" Beethoven asked as the network came back online, filling space with beautiful harmonic frequencies. "Because I fix things for a living," Dave said. "And the first rule of fixing things is that everything needs maintenance eventually, no matter how well it was built. But our engineers assured us that the system was self-maintaining. Self-maintaining doesn't mean maintenance-free. It just means it can handle routine adjustments. But eventually, even the best system needs someone to look at it and make sure everything is still working the way it's supposed to." This is a profound insight. "It's basic preventive maintenance. You guys really need to start reading repair manuals." By this point, Dave had gained what could only be described as a galactic reputation. His consultation requests were coming from species he'd never heard of, from star systems so far away that the light from their suns hadn't reached Earth yet. He was famous for solving impossible problems with simple solutions, and he was starting to understand that this was apparently a very rare skill in a galaxy full of overeducated engineers. "Dave," his uncle said during one of their meetings, "I think we need to talk about your future." "What about it?" "Well, you're getting consultation requests from halfway across the galaxy. The Galactic Council wants to offer you a permanent position as a troubleshooting specialist, and someone from the Outer Rim territories wants to hire you to fix their entire infrastructure." That sounds like a lot of work. It also sounds like a lot of money and a lot of prestige. Dave considered this. "Uncle Frank, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy here? Running maintenance on the Terran orbital station, fixing things that break every day, dealing with the same problems over and over?" Uncle Frank was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, Dave, I am. It's honest work and it matters. Maybe it's not glamorous, but people need clean water and working toilets and reliable life support systems. Without us, this place would fall apart in a week." That's what I thought. Because I've been thinking about all these consultation requests, and they're all basically the same problem. Really smart people who've forgotten how to think simply. And I think maybe the best way I can help is by staying right here and showing people that simple solutions work. If I go off and become some kind of galactic troubleshooter, I'm just another expert with a fancy title. But if I stay here and keep being a janitor who accidentally prevents wars, maybe other people will start thinking that simple solutions are worth trying. Uncle Frank smiled. "You know what, Dave? I think you finally figured out what your real job is." "What's that?" "Teaching the galaxy that sometimes the best expert is someone who doesn't think they're an expert." Dave's decision to stay on the Terran orbital station turned out to be more influential than any of his consulting work. Word spread that the famous maintenance miracle worker had turned down lucrative offers to remain a station janitor, and somehow this became a bigger story than any of his actual achievements. "Sir," General Vextar said during what had become his monthly visits, "you've started a movement." "I've started a what now?" "A movement, sir. There are maintenance workers across the galaxy who are citing your example. They're calling it the Kowalski principle, the idea that simple solutions are often the best solutions, and that the most important work is often the least glamorous work. People are quoting me. There's a maintenance worker on Rigel 7 who prevented an atmospheric processor failure by applying your turn it off and turn it back on methodology. A technician in the Vega system saved an entire colony by cleaning the air filters that everyone else assumed were working properly. A janitor on a mining station in the asteroid belt discovered that their equipment failures were caused by a coffee spill that had been slowly corroding circuits for months. Dave blinked. That last one sounds like something I would do. The point, sir, is that maintenance workers across the galaxy are starting to think of themselves as problem solvers, rather than just people who fix things. And more importantly, engineers and administrators are starting to listen to them. Because of me? Because of you, sir. You've shown everyone that expertise isn't about having the most complicated solution. It's about having the right solution. Dave's story might have ended there, with him contentedly cleaning toilets and occasionally preventing galactic incidents through the strategic application of common sense. But the universe, as Dave had learned, had a sense of humor. The final chapter of his accidental career as a galactic hero began with a message from the highest authority in known space, the Galactic Council itself. "Maintenance Specialist Kowalski," the message began. "The Galactic Council formally requests your assistance with a matter of utmost importance to the stability of interstellar civilization." "Oh, come on," Dave muttered, reading the message in his office. "What now?" The problem, it turned out, was the Council itself. The governing body of the galaxy, a massive space station that served as the center of interstellar politics, was experiencing what they diplomatically called operational difficulties. In plain language, the place was falling apart. "The situation is quite complex," explained Council Speaker Zarthesh Immanuel, who Dave had immediately dubbed Speaker, because life was too short for alien names. "Our facility has been experiencing cascading system failures for months. Life support is unreliable, communication systems are malfunctioning, and our main assembly chamber has been flooded with sewage." "Sewage?" "Yes. Our waste management systems appear to have reversed polarity." Dave paused. "Your toilets are backing up into your meeting rooms? That is an accurate if inelegant description, yes. And you want me to fix it?" "We want you to fix everything, Maintenance Specialist Kowalski. Our best engineers have been unable to identify the cause of these failures. We need someone with your unique perspective. Dave sighed. When do you need me there? Immediately, if possible. The Council is supposed to vote on the Treaty of Galactic Commerce next week, but we cannot conduct business under current conditions. Because of the sewage? Among other things, yes. The Galactic Council Station was impressive in the way that only governmental buildings can be. Massive, expensive, and completely impractical. It had been designed by a committee of architects from 17 different species, none of whom had apparently communicated with the others during the design process. The result was a structure that looked like someone had taken the best ideas from every major civilization and then assembled them while blindfolded. Impressive, isn't it? Speaker said as Dave stared at the station through the viewport of his transport ship. It's something, all right. How long has this place been operational? Nearly 50 years. It represents the pinnacle of interstellar cooperation and engineering excellence. Uh-huh. And when was the last time anyone did maintenance on it? Maintenance? The station was designed to be self-maintaining. Dave closed his eyes. Of course it was. The tour of the Council Station was like a masterclass in everything that could go wrong with a complex system that nobody really understood. The designers had been so focused on making everything impressive and futuristic that they'd apparently forgotten basic principles like, make sure people can actually use this, and don't put the sewage lines next to the food preparation areas. As you can see, Speaker said, leading Dave through a corridor where water was dripping from the ceiling in a suspiciously rhythmic pattern. We have been experiencing some minor difficulties. Minor difficulties? Dave looked at a wall panel that was sparking intermittently. Speaker, when was the last time anyone actually looked at the blueprints for this place? Blueprints? The original design plans. The documents that show how everything is supposed to be connected. Ah, those would be stored in the central archives. Great. Can we look at them? Unfortunately, the central archives are currently flooded. With sewage? With sewage, yes. Dave rubbed his temples. Okay, let me guess. The archives are in the basement, the sewage treatment is on the same level, and when the treatment system backed up, it flooded the records storage. That is remarkably accurate. And now you can't fix the sewage system because the instructions are underwater, and you can't drain the archives because the pumps are connected to the same system that's backing up. Correct. And let me guess, nobody thought to keep backup copies of the blueprints anywhere else? We assumed the originals would be sufficient. Dave sighed. Speaker, has anyone ever told you that you guys are really bad at this whole governing the galaxy thing? The solution to the Council Station's problems was so obvious that Dave felt almost guilty charging his consulting fee. The entire facility had been designed with interconnected systems that were supposed to be more efficient than independent ones. In theory, this was brilliant. In practice, it meant that when one thing went wrong, everything else went wrong too. The problem, Dave explained to an emergency session of the Council, held in the only meeting room that wasn't flooded, is that you built a house of cards. Everything depends on everything else, so when one system fails, the failure cascades through the entire station. But the interconnected design was supposed to be more efficient, protested engineering coordinator Velmark Thess. Efficient, maybe. Reliable, definitely not. You need redundancy, not dependency. Redundancy is wasteful. No, redundancy is insurance. When your waste management system is connected to your life support system, and both are connected to your communication system, and all three are controlled by the same central processor, then any problem with any one of them brings down everything else. So what do you suggest? We isolate the systems, disconnect the waste management from everything else, get it working properly, then move on to the next system, one thing at a time. But that will require extensive modifications to our infrastructure. Yep. It'll also require shutting down the entire station for about a week while we make the changes. The council chamber fell silent. Shut down the entire station? Speaker, you've got sewage backing up into your meeting rooms. How much less functional can this place get? The week-long shutdown of the Galactic Council Station was, according to galactic historians, the first time in 50 years that the galaxy had been without central government. It was also, according to most independent observers, the most peaceful week the galaxy had experienced in decades. Turns out, Dave told General Vextar as they watched teams of engineers disconnecting systems and installing independent backups, The galaxy runs pretty well without a bunch of politicians arguing about everything. That's a dangerous observation, sir. Not dangerous, just honest. Most of the real work gets done by people who just want to solve problems, not by people who want to argue about the best way to solve problems. You're talking about yourself, sir. I'm talking about everyone who does actual work instead of just talking about work. Maintenance crews, engineers, doctors, teachers, the people who make things function. And politicians? Politicians are like management. Sometimes they're helpful, but mostly they just make things more complicated than they need to be. General Vextar laughed. Sir, you do realize that your diplomatic immunity makes you essentially untouchable for saying things like that? Yeah, but I'm not saying it to be rebellious. I'm saying it because it's true. And if the Council wants to keep functioning, they need to remember that their job is to make things easier for the people who actually do the work, not harder. The reopening of the Galactic Council Station was a triumph of common sense over complexity. The sewage system worked. The life support was reliable. The communication arrays functioned properly. And most importantly, when something did go wrong, it didn't bring down everything else with it. Maintenance Specialist Kowalski, Speaker said at the dedication ceremony. The Council would like to formally thank you for your service to galactic civilization. Just doing my job, Dave said. Your job was to fix our waste management system. You've redesigned our entire approach to infrastructure. Same thing, really. Whether it's a toilet or a space station, the principles are the same. Make it simple, make it reliable, and make it so that when something breaks, you can fix it without breaking everything else. This philosophy has applications beyond infrastructure. Sure, government, business, relationships, it all works the same way. Keep things simple, don't overcomplicate stuff, and when something goes wrong, fix it instead of arguing about whose fault it is. Speaker was quiet for a moment. Would you consider a position as a permanent consultant to the Council? Dave shook his head. Thanks, but no. I've got a job, and I'm good at it. Besides, the galaxy doesn't need another expert telling people what to do. It needs more people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and actually do the work. Even if that work is unglamorous? Especially if that work is unglamorous. The most important jobs are usually the ones nobody wants to do. Dave's return to the Terran orbital station was marked by what had become a familiar ritual. General Vextar's monthly visit, except this time he brought a surprise. Sir, the general said, I have something for you. If it's another medal, I'm running out of wall space. It's not a medal, sir, it's a request. What kind of request? The kind that comes directly from the Supreme Military Command. They want to establish a new training program based on your methodologies. Dave blinked. My methodologies? The Kowalski Doctrine, sir. They want to teach military engineers to think like maintenance workers. Think like maintenance workers? Simple solutions, practical approaches, preventive maintenance instead of reactive repairs. The idea is to create a generation of officers who solve problems instead of creating them. Dave considered this. And they want me to teach this? They want you to consult on the curriculum, sir. Help design a program that teaches people to think simply about complex problems. Will I have to travel? Occasionally, but most of the work could be done remotely. You could remain stationed here and participate via communication link. Dave nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Sir, if I may, this could revolutionize military thinking across the galaxy. Or it could turn a bunch of perfectly good soldiers into janitors. Would that be such a bad thing, sir? Dave smiled. No, General, I don't think it would. Epilogue, 6 months later. Dave was in the middle of fixing a malfunctioning air recycler when his comm unit chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at the display and grinned. Dave, said the voice of Lieutenant Garcia, formerly Maintenance Technician Garcia, now a graduate of the first Kowalski Doctrine training program. I wanted to let you know that we used your turn it off and turn it back on method to solve a logistics bottleneck that was costing the fleet 1 million credits a day. What was the problem? Dave asked, still working on the air recycler. Classic overthinking. The logistics officers had designed this incredibly complex supply chain optimization algorithm that was supposed to make everything more efficient. Instead, it was creating delays because it was trying to optimize for 17 different variables simultaneously. And I suggested we turn off the algorithm and go back to the old manual system for a week, just to see what would happen. Let me guess. Everything worked better? 50% improvement in delivery times, sir. Turns out that sometimes the most efficient solution is the simplest one. Dave smiled. Sounds like you're getting the hang of it. I had a good teacher, sir. By the way, there's something else. The program is expanding. They want to implement Kowalski doctrine training in civilian sectors too. Engineering, logistics, even government administration. Government administration? Apparently some of the council members were impressed by your work on their station. They want to train government workers to think like maintenance workers. Well, Dave said, finally getting the air recycler working properly. I guess that's one way to fix politics. He finished his work, packed up his tools, and headed back to his office. On his desk was a stack of consultation requests, a medal from the Andromedan Trade Consortium, and a bottle of antacids. He popped 2 of the antacids, looked at the consultation requests, and then turned to his computer. Computer, he said, compose a message to all pending consultation requests. Ready? The computer replied. Dear whoever you are, Dave dictated. Thank you for thinking of me for your problem. Before you hire me, try this. Turn it off, wait 10 seconds, then turn it back on again. If that doesn't work, check to make sure all the connections are secure. If that doesn't work, try asking someone who actually uses the system every day what they think might be wrong. If none of that works, then call me and we'll talk. Signed, Dave Kowalski, Diplomatic Maintenance Specialist. He sent the message, leaned back in his chair, and looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were overthinking problems that had simple solutions. Someone was trying to fix a complex system without understanding how it worked. Someone was making things more complicated than they needed to be. And tomorrow, Dave would fix whatever needed fixing, one simple solution at a time. After all, someone had to keep the galaxy running. The end.